we're going to talk about your work with poets, your interest in poets, and your collaborations with poets. So I have a list here of books that you've done covers for. And the first one on my list is a book called Behind the Wheel by Michael Brownstein. And it's part of what is now called the Mimeo Revolution. It was they were on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, which was a normal sheet of paper.
I did paintings of windows at the time, and I thought it'd be a nice literary image. It sort of refers to a lot of experiences that people have had common. We all have had the experience with it, inside and outside.
You're known for working very quickly, so is this something you feel like you did on the spot?
No. This is very careful, and the lettering alone took time.
How did you create that lettering?
Out of my head.
But I mean, is it cut out or is it?
No, it's just. I would imagine it would be. I painted around the letters.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so then after this one, that was 67 and 69. Then you did a few book collaborations, including Freely Espousing.
Freely Espousing was Jimmy Schuyler.
And that was actually, it was 1969, and it was actually James Schuyler's first published collection of poems. He'd had a small press book.
I had no idea.
But it was kind of it was published by Paris Review in conjunction with Doubleday, so it was like a very important book for him and also for the poetry world. So were you aware of that at the time? Was there any kind of...
I just thought Jimmy was terrific.
Mm-hmm.
Formally, he's better than Whitman.
His long poems.
Long poems. His poems have wonderful rhythm, and they never break down. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anyone better. I can't remember how it was to love you. It must have been lousy.
No, it's not to be in love with you.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was like. It must have been lousy.
That's it. He nailed it.
Yeah. This is another book cover that you did. This was for Grove Press, and it's Kenneth Koch's book called The Pleasures of Peace.
The first cover, I just had a thin line going like that, and had the Pleasures of Peace in like Futura lettering, and the salesman said, no one's going to see it on the bookshelf because they cover that. And I said, it's going to be an edition of 600, no one's going to buy it anyway. And then I did it with a violet and yellow, and they thought the colors were too homosexual.
They said that? Wow.
So then this is the third time I did the cover. It's the same image as the other one, but I made the colors more...
I love those colors. It is so...
The colors are nice, but I liked it with the violet.
But they feel very much of the time period, the late 60s, to me. And I like that you did this lettering, of course, and I like how you have like the E is elided by this fold of the flag, and the C also. And then also I like how it has has your lettering on the spine, or a version of your lettering. Tell me a little bit about Bill Berkson and your relationship with Bill, and also this cover, which I love because it's so kind of fresh, the lettering and how you did it and all.
Yeah, subsequently I've done a lot of things like this.
Yeah.
This was new for me to make something this open. I didn't realize how good it is when I did it. It seemed okay. But a lot of things I make, they get better. I mean, I get to like them better after they're done. Other people get it and I don't. And this is one of those. It looks really good now. Yeah.
It's interesting to me, like thinking about these bands that you put in, because I feel like that was not typical of other people who are doing these Mimeo books. It's almost like faux designery, you know what I mean? It's like something like a design, like a bound book would have.
Well, it's like more like a professional designer.
Yeah.
Very arty.
And this image is a portrait of Bill. I mean, how much was his image? I mean, he was known to be like this very well-dressed man about town, as well as working with the downtown poets, and he was a critic already and had reviewed your work. How was his public persona figure into this artwork?
He was an uptown person, and then at one point he decided he wanted to be a downtown person. So he gave away all his clothes. He was the best dressed person, and he gave away his clothes and moved downtown and started wearing downtown clothing.
Dungarees and vests and
dungarees and
work shirts.
Leather jackets and work shirts.
Could you talk a little bit about the importance of repartee in that culture, in the New York school poets and also beyond?
The New York painting scene was dominated by, the downtown scene was all what you call coffee house dialectics. It's very far from the English world, and it's like the top of your head stuff, you know.
The other one, a big one, in terms of, you know, this poet being part of your world, and you've depicted him several times, is the poet John Ashbery. You know, had already made a big splash on the poetry scene with his first book, Some Trees, which was given a prize by Yale Younger Poets Prize, and then he lived in Paris for about 10 years, and when he came back, he did a reading hosted by the Living Theater, and he read a poem called The Skaters, and that, you said, was kind of a very significant moment in New York's cultural history.
Big thing. It was in styling, it was like the poetry's coming into the cool style, and the hot style is gone, and that meant the beats. And Frank O'Hara. He put a camp. He came. He gave it was at the building where the Living Theater was. And,
it was about 1966.
Yeah, and he had a big reputation from the tennis courts at that point. And he came in a suit and a white shirt and a tie, and read in a monotone, which no one had done before.
So Fragment, this is published by Black Sparrow, so you didn't do the cover. It's dedicated to James Schuyler. But talk a little bit about this, because these are, I believe, gouaches that you created.
I wanted to do images that were parallel, you know, to his. His thing was, when you read his poems, there were images just one after the other. They're very visual, and so what I wanted to do is parallel it, so just make a whole bunch of images. When I finished it, I invited him over. He had a martini, and he placed them.
Well, there's a really nice balance in this layout, because you have these stanzas that are all the same length, and there are always two stanzas on this side and an artwork on this side, or sometimes it flips, but it's always two stanzas and then an artwork.
I did do two sets. The first set of illustrations was more or less to see what it would look like, and then once I got that, I did a second set of the gouaches.
And in 1970, you did this very interesting project with Kenneth Koch called Interlocking Lives, which is a big book. It's almost like a yearbook or a textbook.
Kenneth approached me and says he wanted to do artwork with me. And I said, okay. I mean, I like Kenneth. I think Kenneth's a terrific poet. He came over, and then he did stuff with Larry Rivers, and it goes like this. He makes a drawing, and Larry Rivers erases part of it and puts in lettering. That went on for a little while, and I said, listen, I'm not going to have no poet work on my drawings. No, I'll give you something. So I gave him this thing with the empty balloons. I said, you fill in the balloons. And he said 3 years he couldn't figure out anything that would be better than the empty balloon, you know? And then he got this idea of making four like short stories about the balloons. And he filled it in, and it was terrific. He just destroyed it. In a sense, he destroyed the images.
Yeah, so what happens is it's the same sequence of drawings with different texts.
Yeah.
And they're not in the balloons.
Yeah, the one is like Eisenhower golfing. It's a guy seen from the back. And then the second story would be some guy pissing. be the same gesture, you know.
Right. That's
He
Kenward
was like a
Elmsley.
movie star.
And he did a lot of kind of experimental theater, cabaret.
Yeah, well, he was a friend of John Mathews, who was at Yale, and he became a big Broadway writer and producer. And Cameron always was nuts about musicals, so we did musicals.
But you had maintained your relationship with Kenward.
Yeah, I
because,
like Cameron. I did the book Motor Disturbances.
Right, that was in 71. Then in 1972, this is another mimeograph book, and it's called City Junket. And it's interesting, these mimeographed editions, like this was published in an edition of 350 copies. And here again, the lettering is very important, and then you just have these two eyes. What was your concept for this?
The title of it is clear, and the two eyes are give you an idea of some mystery. You know, I thought it made it a great cover, and I liked the color. The gray seemed to go with Kenward Emily's sort of surrealist approach.
And these are hand painted.
Yeah, that's all hand done.
But by what technique?
Gouache. I must have painted around them.
Because lettering was something that was one of like a very important class that you took when you were at Cooper Union.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a commercial artist. I took lettering and flunked. I didn't flunk it. I got a C-. But the lettering is an abstract world of its own, and I learned a lot about art in the lettering class.
So we've been talking mainly about book covers so far, but there was also very vibrant scene by these same publishers, a lot of these same publishers of literary journals. Tell me a little bit about this work, this is a very highly cropped, but it is based on a portrait of Edwin Denby, again with this very particular hand lettering that you did.
Yeah, I did a painting of Edwin with a big smile and a big, it's a 7-foot face, or 8-foot face. It's in the Guggenheim show. And I saw Greta Garbo in Ninotchka, and she had a laugh that was totally nuts. And Edwin has the same laugh, totally nuts laugh. And I wanted to see if I could get it. You know, that was where the painting went. This is more open than anything I did before.
When you say open, you mean you did it quickly, or it's
open.
just not pre-planned?
Well, not pre-planned. You kept a lot of the stuff in, little extra things that would pop up, which I wouldn't have done years before.
It's also kind of very minimalist, the way there's just like a few details that indicate these teeth. It's almost like a flash of light as on his face.
Well, the whole thing's supposed to be like a flash, you know.
This is a book called Phoebe Light by Alice Notley, published by Big Sky Books. So that's Bill Berkson again. Yeah, it's a little bit different because it's an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper folded in half and stapled on the sides with an offset cover, which is the same image, this image of the lake in Maine, but in different tones, and the front has the lettering on it. Do you remember working on this, and why did you choose this image for this poet?
Kind of a lyric image. It seemed to fit her work.
That was one of her earliest books, too.
Yeah.
This book is interesting. Selected Declarations of Dependence, not Independence, by Harry Mathews. And this has again, like the cover and the lettering is so particular, and you can see your interest and devotion to lettering, and then the interior is also interesting.
Harry Mathews was a very high style, you know, and a lot of the New York poetry world was a little grungy. He connected with the group of French writers. So I thought the thing to do with Harry was to make an illustration of the dog. And the dog is produced in 3 different colors.
Same image, but with different tonalities.
Different tones, yeah. everything is like those poets where everything is pre-planned, so he can work out the images.
Well, the repetition is interesting with variations because a lot of the work in that book has to do with proverbs, which he then switches around.
Inverted problems, inverted proverbs.
Yeah.
So these is not parallel, these go with it.
Right, exactly.
You know.
Basically, when you've done images for a book of poetry, that they're complementary.
Yeah, parallel, complemental. These are function inside their aesthetics, but it's not literal.
Another book, I always found this cover very interesting. It's a little bit, it relates to your paintings, but it's a little bit different from the other book covers.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Far.
I think I connected her to the new wave writing of French. Was behind the French writers who were doing things very specifically, were very hot. The writing had to do with every details, optical details. They're very specific.
Another Z Press, Calais, Vermont. I guess this was interesting, the same year as the Selected Declarations of Dependence, published by Z Press. The journal Z number 6. And one of the things I like about it is that it's issue number 6, but if you look here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're like, whoa, he made a mistake. But then you see there's a Z on the moose's nose. Tell me about the moose. Like how?
Well, I was painting a moose. I thought a moose is the most ridiculous thing in the world for Kenwood. It's so refined.
Is that ink? It looks like ink.
Ink, yeah. I'll try something out.
It's almost abstract. It's almost like it falls apart, the image, at least in the background. Was that something you were trying for?
Just fooling around with that idea, yeah.
These are 2 journal covers that I think is interesting to look at together because they both depict women with bathing caps. Talk a little bit about these images and how you chose them and created them, because they're always original images that you do.
Yeah. Well, this is from a painting. I got involved with the idea of the bathing cap changing a woman to something very elegant, because it has the lines like Egyptian, the bathing cap. So I did this big painting with 6 women in bathing caps, and I was on the thing of women's relationships to women. In other words, these are the bathing cap series. I think they were all girls.
Right. These are some books that I published. These books that I published were very much inspired by those books and magazines that we were looking at earlier that were published in the 60s and 70s. And so we wanted a very kind of, clean, unpretentious look to the books and how they felt and how they read and how much they cost. They're very accessible. But how did you come up with this cover, and what was your thinking in line with that?
Anti-war. Wars in general are pretty bad for all people, but mostly I feel it's bad for children. And I thought with an anti-war thing, the idea of the children is, for me, major. The Holocaust thing is like one of those things, and there was a picture of a middle-aged woman around 40 or so with the 2 sons, and they're all dressed up in their best clothes, the sons and all, and they're going to be killed. And the 2 sons look terrified, because they know this is like a bad news. And it sort of got to me, and this is related to that.
How about this book for Carter Ratcliffe? This was a poem, Arrivederci Modernismo, that you included in that Face of the Poet series.
The poem, he seems to contain energy through the whole long poem. It's a lot like the Michael Lally poem, and it's on aesthetics. And in dealing with the decline of the modern art, I mean, people now realize that modern art is different from contemporary art. After all, Malevich is almost 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
No. And this is a book about that. And I think it was pretty radical in its time, because it was way ahead.
This is an interesting project that you were working on with Robert Creeley and a composer. This was going to be an opera. It was a libretto that Creeley wrote based on the Edgar Allan Poe story, Ligeia.
Poe all of a sudden became hip. And it's, the opera is words mostly. And I'd say like a rhetorical opera. And so my design was to put the people on like pea ponds 20 feet up in the air. It ends up with one of these figures, they're all lit inside the pods, and the light goes up and the person turns around, it's another person. A really kind of melodramatic kind of thing. Anyhow, the composer was made a score that was postmodern, and he showed it to Creeley. Creeley just took what he thought it was terrible, and so the process stopped. And I hope someday we can get it together. You know. The harbor master, Frank O'Hara. I wanted to be sure to reach you. Though my ship was on the way, it got caught in some moorings. I am always tying up and then deciding to depart. In storms and at sunset, with the metallic coils of the tide around my fathomless arms, I am unable to understand the forms of my vanity, or I am heartily with my Polish rider in my hand and the sun sinking. To you I offered my hull and the tattered cordage of my will, the terrible channels where the wind drives me against the brown lips of the reeds are not all behind me. Yet I trust the sanity of my vessel, and if it sinks, it may well be an answer to the reasoning of the eternal voices, the waves which have kept me from reaching you. That's it. Right?
And then this, I would like to read this piece here. So this is from a book, it was actually an edition of Big Sky magazine, again published by Bill Berkson. It was a double issue, Big Sky 11 and 12, edited by Bill Berkson and Joe LeSueur, and it's homage to Frank O'Hara, published in 1978. So there's a lot of people in here with different writings and artworks, and this has your cutout portrait of Frank O'Hara. And then this is Memoir by Alex Katz, 1967. I'm in Ogden, Utah, in a Victorian carriage house. It's clean and there are rugs on the floors. There's an excellent library and an excellent gym 1 block away. We live on the top floor and I have a studio below. The studio is about 30 by 40 feet and is also soot-free. The country around here is exhilarating. There are huge mountains to the east and flat farms on the west which run into the Great Salt Lake. The farms are well irrigated, some by channels from the mountains. They are mostly truck farms, some dairy, some wheat, and some with pigs, sheep, or beef. The last time I saw Frank, we ate at the Grand Ticino on Thompson Street and went to the Judson Church to see a play by Ruth Krauss. Frank had gotten the tickets in advance, but we brought Vincent along and were one short. Frank put himself on the waiting list and met us inside. It was hot and sweaty in the theater, but there were some good lines. When we got out, it was balmy and pleasant. We had some ice cream and went to his place for drinks. I don't remember what we talked about. Could have been anything from Ruth White to the Pomodoro sculpture on his coffee table. It was a pleasant end to a pleasant evening. The late afternoon made long shadows at Lincolnville Beach. Edwin with taped ribs, Jerry, Ada, and myself were strangely manic, waiting for the Greyhound bus to take us to the funeral. At times, Frank seemed to be a priest who got into a different business. Even on his 6th martini, 2nd pack of cigarettes, and while calling a friend a bag of shit and roaring off into the night. Frank's business was being an active intellectual. He was out to improve our world, whether we liked it or not. Although I could question his judgments, I found his reasoning difficult to resist. The frightening amount of energy he invested in our art and our lives often made me feel like a miser. The elusive quality of Frank is his sense of style. To say he was interested in what was right and what was wrong wouldn't make him that different from a lot of people. Frank's particular idea of what is right is what negotiates with maximum vitality. Vitality being what emanates from the surface. Manners and intent have no meaning. Sneakers and suntans are the exotic wardrobe of the out-of-towner to a native New Yorker. There was more chaos, more cocktail parties, and more telephone calls. Now our lives are more orderly, but less interesting. Pretty good.
That was pretty good. That's amazing.
Say something about Frank O'Hara.
No, I said it there. Oh, Frank's my favorite all-time poet. That's it.